And we begin with a Fox News alert on major developments in the Brussels terror attacks. Welcome to Happening Now. I'm John Scott.
John, good to be with you. I'm Abby Huntsman in for Jenna Lee today. And Belgian state media reporting that a second attacker is believed to be on the run right now in connection with the subway attack. And this as a manhunt intensifies for the man in the white jacket you can see here on surveillance video accompanying the two airport suicide bombers. At least 4 Americans are still missing in the wake of these horrific attacks. We will get a live report from Brussels in just a few moments.
As the manhunt continues for the suspects in the bombings, there are urgent warnings about new threats. A top European security official says ISIS is taking, quote, a more aggressive stance toward Europe, and says investigators are focusing on potentially 5,000 suspects, many of whom are back in Europe now after traveling to Syria. Let's bring in KT McFarland, the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense under President Reagan and a Fox News national security analyst. This has to be, Kate, a national security nightmare.
Oh, yeah. In fact, it's even worse than that. The 5,000, this is the head of Europol. That's the police organization that oversees all of the European police forces. He said that there are 5,000 Europeans who have left Europe, gone in to fight with ISIS and train, and are now back in Europe. Another intelligence agency, though, has said that there are 500, anywhere from 400, 500, 600 very experienced ISIS fighters who are already in Europe, and they're the sort of masterminds. Those are the guys who are bomb makers. Those are the guys who will set up sleeper cells. Those are the guys who carried out, like the Paris attacks, like the Brussels attacks of this week. What this does, John, is it totally overwhelms the European police forces and intelligence community's ability to get in front of it. They will always be playing catch-up ball. And
that wave of migrants that we've seen over the last few months, that only complicates the situation there.
Well, that's a really good point, John, because they're talking about the 5,000, the 500, that's what's already there. The German development minister has said, look, we expect maybe 8 million migrants to be coming into Europe starting this spring over the 7 months of the summer. And ISIS has said, in fact, one of the terrorists that we've captured has bragged that they have come through. They're hiding within those migrant waves, those refugee waves. So however bad it is now, it's about to get a lot worse.
There are some simple explanations, I guess, for the problems they have in tracking these guys. For one thing, just translating an Arabic name in French or German, can give you different results. So they can't even maintain consistency about trying to track the people they're worried about.
This is a big problem that we don't understand in the United States because we all speak English. But if you're translating from Arabic into French, let's say the name Bashar. Well, that could be spelled B-A-S-H-I-R. It could be B-A-S-H-A-R-E-R. And if it's going from Arabic to French, and then maybe it's going from French to German, German to Italian, Italian to Greek, somehow those names can get scrambled as the intelligence services try to cooperate with each other and law enforcement does. So even if they were organized, which they're not, but even if the law enforcement was organized to talk to each other, they have that other additional problem. And the other thing, John, that's very troublesome is once somebody gets in the European Union, once they're in Greece, once they're in Italy, they can travel freely throughout the continent. Nobody stops them at the border saying, let me see your passport. Who are you again? Where are you going? And we know that the terrorists that we've picked up so far who have been involved in the Paris and Brussels attacks, they were all hiding in plain sight. They were being protected by the communities in which they were living.
Well, it raises questions about the much maligned no-fly list that the U.S. maintains. If the Europeans can't even keep track of the names or keep consistent with the names of the people they suspect, I mean, those people are basically one plane ticket away from the United States, aren't they, if they have a European visa?
Yeah, and John, that's why it's troubling for us, because if they have a European passport and they're not on any databases or they don't come on a no-fly list, and we have seen that a lot of them have not been flagged by Belgian or other security services, all they do is buy a plane ticket to JFK, and they just present themselves, they get the automatic visa waiver, and then they're in the United States and they disappear. That's why it's a threat to us, because they really are just one plane ride away.
Is it possible? I mean, I'd like to, believe that these threats from ISIS are perhaps empty threats. They're just trying to rattle people, scare people about the number of attackers that they have ready to go in Europe. Is that possible, or is that just wishful thinking?
Well, I think that, look, they're going to brag that they're 10 feet tall, and they're not 10 feet tall. But if you look at the numbers, the sheer numbers, even if it's only half of the numbers they're talking about, and then you compare that against the soft targets, the places where there is no security. I mean, for example, in the Brussels attack, this bomb went off in the arrival area, not after you've gone through security and you're at the gate. This is when you're just pulling up to the curb with your suitcase. That means every airport in the world, except for Israel, nobody has that security before you get to the gate. We need to rethink the whole system. And
there is a steady parade of people going to visit Israel, law enforcement officials trying to figure out how they can harden some of these targets that have been so soft for so long. All right, so, put on your national security hat. What do you do in this country to try to stem the tide of ISIS arrivals and potentially prevent this kind of thing, the kind of attacks that we saw in Belgium, from happening here?
Well, I think it needs to be a comprehensive approach and take a step back. We are facing an enemy of global jihadists that are equivalent to World War II and the Nazis or the Cold War and the communists. And we don't solve it by just throwing a couple thousand troops into the Middle East or, maybe take away some of the visas in the United States. We need a comprehensive program with all of Western civilization, with all the European countries, probably even with Russia, to stand up and say, only the United States can lead this, but it needs an economic component. Go after their wealth. It needs a visa immigration component. Who is here and what are they doing here? It needs a military component, an ideological component. It needs all the kind of elements of national power that we assembled to defeat Nazis and communists. And I don't see this president's not going to do it. It's going to be up to the next president, because I don't see any other world leader in a position to do it. It's got to be the United States, and it's got to be the American president.
KT McFarland, our national security analyst. KT, thank you.